The crystal chandelier reflected on the poisoned dessert, while Emma Johnson, 7 years old, watched the billionaire CEO bring the spoon to his lips. In 3 seconds, Michael Carter would be dead, unless the janitor's daughter found the courage to scream, but no one imagined what would come next. Before we dive into the story, leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The annual Carter Industries Ball vibrated with the energy of Manhattan's elite, crystal glasses clinking amid classical music and whispered conversations about stock prices and offshore investments. Michael Carter, 32 years old and owner of an $11 billion fortune, moved through the crowd with rehearsed ease. His Tom Ford tuxedo was perfectly tailored, the diamond buttons catching light from the enormous chandeliers above. Every detail of the night had been orchestrated to showcase his company's unprecedented quarterly growth, from the imported orchids adorning each table to the 5-course dinner prepared by a Michelin-starred chef. Emma Johnson leaned against the wall near the kitchen entrance. Her blonde hair tied in a simple ponytail, her yellow cotton dress, a hand-me-down from her cousin, contrasted sharply with the designer gowns swirling around her. At 7 years old, she shouldn't be in the main hall, but her father, Robert, had been called to fix a plumbing emergency upstairs, and she had wandered from the service area where she was supposed to wait quietly. "Ladies and gentlemen," Michael's voice echoed through the microphone as he took center stage, his smile radiating the confidence that had built his empire from a small tech startup to a global powerhouse. "Tonight, we celebrate not just our success, but our commitment to innovation and excellence." The crowd applauded enthusiastically, glasses raised in toast after toast. Emma watched from her corner, mesmerized by the glittering world she had never seen before, a universe distant from the tiny 2-bedroom apartment she shared with her parents in Brooklyn, where her mother Linda worked double shifts cleaning office buildings just to pay rent. As the night progressed, Emma noticed something that made her stomach clench with unease. She had been watching the kitchen staff, fascinated by their choreographed movements, when she saw a waiter, someone she didn't recognize from her father's descriptions of Carter Industries' regular staff, place something small and white in the chocolate mousse destined for Mr. Carter's table. The waiter's movements were quick, rehearsed, almost invisible to everyone else in the busy kitchen. But Emma had always been observant, a trait that often got her in trouble at school when she pointed out things adults preferred to ignore. Her teacher called it unusually acute attention to detail for a child her age, though Emma simply thought of it as seeing what others missed. Her heart raced as she watched the contaminated dessert pass through the kitchen, through the head chef's final inspection, onto the silver tray, and toward the dining room. She knew she should tell someone, but who would believe a 7-year-old child? And what if she was wrong? What if she had imagined it all? Michael was deeply engaged in conversation with the mayor and several board members when the dessert course arrived. The chocolate mousse, garnished with gold leaf and fresh raspberries, looked like a work of art. He picked up his spoon, still talking about the new sustainability initiative his company was launching, completely unaware of the danger inches from his lips. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Every instinct in her small body screamed that something was terribly wrong. She had heard her parents talking in low tones about people who might want to hurt Mr. Carter, business rivals, disgruntled former employees, even foreign competitors. Her father had mentioned increased security measures, additional background checks, and new protocols for all staff. "The future of technology lies not just in innovation," Michael continued, raising the spoon toward his mouth, "but in our responsibility to—" "No, don't eat that!" Emma's voice cut through the elegant atmosphere like a fire alarm, high-pitched and desperate. All conversations stopped, every head turned. The live orchestra hesitated, missing several notes before falling silent. Michael froze, spoon halfway to his mouth, the chocolate mousse trembling on the silver utensil. 200 pairs of eyes focused on the small blonde girl in the yellow dress, alone near the kitchen entrance, with tears streaming down her face. "Someone poisoned it!" Emma screamed, her voice breaking with emotion. "I saw a man put something in your dessert. Please don't eat it!" The silence that followed was deafening. Then came the laughter, soft chuckles at first, then full amusement from the sophisticated crowd. A billionaire CEO threatened by a child's imagination. The absurdity of it struck them as delightful dinner entertainment. "Isn't that cute?" someone whispered loud enough for half the hall to hear. "The cleaning crew's daughter thinks she's protecting Michael Carter." But Michael didn't laugh. Something in the child's voice, the genuine terror in her eyes, the way she was trembling, reminded him of his own childhood, of moments when he knew something was wrong, but couldn't get adults to listen. He set the spoon aside carefully and gestured to his security chief, James Thompson, who was already moving toward the girl. "Wait," Michael said, raising his hand. "Emma, isn't it? Your father works in maintenance here." He made it a point to know every employee's family situation, a practice that had served him well in building loyalty. "Tell me exactly what you saw." Emma wiped her nose with the back of her hand, trying to control her sobs. "A man, I don't know him, with dark hair and a black jacket like the other waiters, but different shoes, expensive like yours. He waited until everyone was busy, then dropped something small and white in your mousse when he thought no one was looking." The specificity of her observation sent a chill through the room. James Thompson was already on his radio calling for the building to be secured, while two other security officers began discreetly checking desserts at neighboring tables. "Which man?" Michael asked gently, crouching to Emma's eye level despite his expensive tuxedo. Emma pointed with a trembling finger toward the service area. "He's already gone. He left right after handing the tray to the regular waiter." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "My daddy says bad people sometimes try to hurt good people who have important jobs. I was scared you might die." The security chief returned in minutes, carrying a small evidence bag and wearing an expression that drained the color from Michael's face. "Sir, we need to evacuate the building immediately. The child was right. Preliminary field testing shows traces of ricin in the dessert." The elegant ballroom erupted in chaos. Guests rushed toward exits while security guided them through controlled evacuation procedures. Emergency service sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder each second. Within minutes, the glittering celebration had transformed into a crime scene, with federal agents interviewing witnesses and forensic specialists photographing every surface. But Michael Carter couldn't stop looking at the small blonde girl who had saved his life, now crying softly in her father's arms while paramedics examined her for toxin exposure. Emma Johnson, 7 years old, daughter of a janitor and a cleaning woman, living in a Brooklyn apartment that probably cost less than he spent on wine per month, had possessed the courage and clarity to save him when every adult in the room had failed to notice the threat. As FBI agents began their investigation and his security team implemented lockdown protocols, Michael made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow, he would drive to Brooklyn personally, not in his usual bulletproof limousine with security detail, but in his red Ferrari, the car that represented everything he had achieved, everything Emma's act of bravery had preserved. He needed to look this remarkable child and her family in the eyes and find a way to express gratitude that went far beyond words. The little girl who had saved a billionaire's life was about to discover that heroes, no matter how small, never go unrewarded. But neither Michael nor Emma could have imagined the extraordinary journey their meeting would set in motion, or the dangerous enemies his gratitude would awaken. Robert Johnson stood at his second-floor apartment window, watching Atlantic Street below, with a nervous energy that had kept him awake all night. The morning sun cast long shadows between the cramped buildings, highlighting the contrast between his neighborhood and the gleaming towers of Manhattan, where he spent his days maintaining the empire Michael Carter had built. "She's been having nightmares," Linda whispered, joining her husband at the window, while Emma slept restlessly in the room they had converted from a closet. "She keeps asking if the bad man will come back, if Mr. Carter is really safe." Robert wrapped his arm around his wife's shoulders, feeling the exhaustion that had settled into his bones from working 3 different cleaning jobs just to cover their basic expenses. The FBI agents said they caught the guy trying to board a flight to Switzerland. Emma's testimony was crucial. She remembered details that even the security cameras missed. The sound of an engine, unlike anything their neighborhood had ever heard, made both parents peer out the window. A red Ferrari, its paint gleaming like liquid fire, was trying to navigate the narrow street, cluttered with double-parked cars and potholes the city had promised to fix 3 years ago. "That can't be," Linda breathed, recognizing the distinctive profile behind the steering wheel, despite the baseball cap and dark sunglasses that couldn't disguise Michael Carter's aristocratic features. Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes, still wearing the same yellow dress from the night before because it was her only good outfit. "Mommy, why is there a fancy car out there? Are we in trouble because I yelled at the party?" Before her parents could answer, the doorbell rang, a sound so rare in their building it took a moment to recognize it. Most visitors just yelled from the street or called on cell phones. Robert went downstairs, his heart pounding with a mixture of anxiety and disbelief that one of the richest men in the world was standing outside his daughter's home. Michael Carter looked strangely vulnerable without his usual entourage of assistants and bodyguards, wearing jeans and a simple white shirt that probably cost more than Robert's monthly salary, but somehow made him seem more human. In his hands, he carried a small wrapped box and an expression of genuine humility that transformed his face from the confident CEO photographed in business magazines to someone who looked almost young, despite his 32 years. "Mr. Johnson, I hope you don't mind me coming here unannounced," Michael began, his voice lacking its usual authoritative tone. "I wanted to thank Emma personally, away from all the chaos and reporters. What she did last night," he paused, struggling to find adequate words to express the magnitude of her actions. "She saved my life." Robert invited him upstairs, acutely aware of the peeling paint on the stairway walls and the broken light fixture he'd been meaning to fix for months. His apartment, which had always seemed cozy despite its size, now felt impossibly small, with Michael Carter's presence filling the tiny living room. Emma appeared from behind her mother's legs, no longer the brave girl who had commanded a ballroom's attention, but a shy 7-year-old overwhelmed by having such an important visitor in her home. She stared at Michael with wide blue eyes, taking in every detail of his appearance as if trying to memorize the moment. "Hello, Emma," Michael said, crouching to her level, exactly as he had done the night before. "I brought something to thank you. But first I want you to know that what you did was the bravest thing I've ever seen. You saved my life when no one else could." Emma's voice was barely above a whisper. "I was really scared you were going to die and couldn't let that happen because my daddy says you're a good man who helps people have jobs." The simplicity and sincerity of her words hit Michael harder than any board presentation or hostile takeover attempt ever had. He handed her the small wrapped box, watching her face light up as she carefully removed the paper to reveal a delicate silver bracelet with a small star-shaped pendant. "My grandmother gave me a star pendant when I was your age," Michael explained. "She told me that stars shine brightest in the darkest moments, and that's exactly what you did for me. You were my guiding star when everything went dark." Emma held the bracelet with reverent care, as if it were made of the most precious materials in the universe, which in a way it was. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," she whispered, then looked at her parents. "Can I wear it always?" Linda's eyes filled with tears as she helped fasten the bracelet around her daughter's thin wrist. It was more than a gift. It was a symbol of recognition, of value, of a moment when their humble family had mattered in the vast machinery of the world. "There's one more thing," Michael continued, turning to address Robert and Linda. "I've been thinking about Emma all night, about her courage and extraordinary observational abilities. I'd like to establish an educational fund for her, something to ensure she has every opportunity to develop her remarkable talents." Robert's pride competed with his practical concerns. "Mr. Carter, we appreciate the gesture, but Emma is just a normal girl. What she did was brave, but—" "No," Michael interrupted gently but firmly. "She's not just a normal girl. The details she remembered, the clarity of her observations under pressure, the moral courage to speak up when every adult in the room had missed the danger. These aren't normal characteristics, Mr. Johnson. They're extraordinary." He pulled out a business card and handed it to Linda. "This is my personal assistant's information. I'd like Emma to be evaluated by some child development specialists I know, not to pressure her or force her into anything she doesn't want, but to better understand her capabilities. And I'd like to discuss some immediate improvements to your family's situation." Emma tugged on Michael's sleeve, drawing his attention back to her level. "Mr. Carter, why did the bad man want to hurt you?" The question, asked with such innocent frankness, made Michael pause. How could he explain the complex world of corporate rivalries, international espionage, and the jealousy that extreme success could generate? How could he tell this pure-hearted child that some people destroy others simply because they can't stand to see them succeed? Sometimes, Emma, when people work very hard and achieve great things, other people get jealous and angry instead of being happy for them. It's not right and it's not fair, but it happens. That's why what you did was so special. You chose to help instead of looking the other way. Emma nodded solemnly, processing this information with the same intense focus she had shown while watching the kitchen the night before. "Will more bad people try to hurt you?" Michael felt a chill at the question because he knew the answer was probably yes. Last night's attack had been sophisticated and well-planned, suggesting resources and connections that went far beyond a single disgruntled individual. His security team was already investigating corporate rivals and foreign competitors who might benefit from his death. "I have very good people protecting me now," he said carefully, "and I have you watching out for me too, don't I? That makes me feel much safer." But as Michael prepared to leave the Johnson family's apartment, he couldn't shake Emma's question or his own growing certainty that last night's attack was just the beginning. Someone had wanted him dead badly enough to infiltrate his most secure event, and they would certainly try again. What he didn't know was that his visit to Brooklyn had already been photographed by long-range cameras, and that his decision to personally thank the Johnson family had marked them as targets in a game they didn't even know they were playing. The girl who had saved a billionaire was about to learn that sometimes being a hero came with a price no child should have to pay. As the red Ferrari disappeared down the busy street, Emma pressed her face against the window, touching the star pendant at her throat and wondering if she would see the kind man again. She had no way of knowing that Michael Carter was already planning to transform her life in ways that would challenge everything her family thought they knew about their future, or that dark forces were already moving to ensure the transformation never happened. Michael Carter sat in his private office on the 62nd floor of Carter Tower, Manhattan, spread below him like a circuit board of ambition and conquest. 3 days had passed since his visit to Brooklyn, and the child development assessment reports were scattered across his mahogany desk like pieces of a puzzle that was revealing a more extraordinary picture than he had imagined possible. Dr. Rachel Chen, one of the country's leading specialists in gifted child psychology, leaned forward in her chair with an expression of professional excitement barely contained beneath her clinical demeanor. "Michael, in 30 years of evaluating exceptional children, I've never encountered cognitive patterns like Emma Johnson's. Her spatial intelligence quotient is off the charts. Literally, she scored beyond the highest measurable range on 3 separate tests." D. The second report, compiled by Dr. James Whitmore from Columbia's Institute of Child Cognition, confirmed what Michael had intuited that night in the ballroom. Her pattern recognition abilities are extraordinary. She can identify sequences and anomalies that most adults would miss completely. But more significantly, she demonstrates what we call hyper-environmental awareness. the ability to process massive amounts of sensory data simultaneously and identify threats or opportunities that others ignore. Michael picked up the third assessment, this one from a specialist in childhood trauma and resilience. What impresses me most, Dr. Lisa Martinez had written, aren't just Emma's intellectual capabilities, but her moral reasoning development. She operates from an ethical decision-making framework that typically doesn't emerge until adolescence, combined with the emotional courage to act on those convictions despite potential personal consequences. "Gentlemen," Michael said to his assembled security team, "what we're seeing isn't just an intelligent child who happened to save my life. We're seeing someone with the potential to revolutionize how we approach risk assessment and threat detection. The question is, how do we nurture these abilities without exploiting them?" James Thompson, his security chief, looked uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "Sir, with respect, we're talking about a 7-year-old girl from Brooklyn. Maybe we should focus on keeping her and her family safe rather than turning her into some kind of asset." "I'm not talking about turning her into anything," Michael replied firmly. "I'm talking about giving her opportunities that match her capabilities. The Johnson family is living in poverty while their daughter possesses abilities that could benefit humanity in ways we're only beginning to understand." His personal assistant knocked and entered with a concerned expression. "Mr. Carter, there's been a development. The FBI contacted us about unusual activity around the Johnson family's neighborhood. Someone has been conducting surveillance, professional level, not amateur." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Michael had feared this possibility from the moment he decided to visit Brooklyn personally. By publicly acknowledging Emma's role in saving his life, he had inadvertently painted a target on her family's backs. "How bad?" he asked quietly. 3 different vehicles, rotating schedules, always staying within legal limits. "They're good. If Emma hadn't developed that hyper-awareness you mentioned, they probably wouldn't have been noticed." Michael felt his blood chill. "She noticed them? Called her father yesterday to report new cars with people watching our building. The FBI confirmed her observations were accurate down to license plate numbers and detailed physical descriptions of the occupants." Dr. Chen shook her head in amazement. A 7-year-old detected professional surveillance that was designed to be invisible. "Michael, this child's capabilities are beyond extraordinary. They're potentially revolutionary, but they're also making her incredibly valuable to people who may not have her best interests at heart." The weight of responsibility settled on Michael's shoulders like a physical burden. Emma's extraordinary gifts, the same abilities that had saved his life, were now putting her in danger. Every scenario his security team ran concluded the same way. The Johnson family needed protection, but protection meant acknowledging that Emma's abilities made her a target for anyone seeking advantage in the high-stakes world of international business and corporate espionage. "What are our options?" Michael asked. Thompson consulted his tablet. "We can provide discreet security for the family, but their current location makes that challenging. The building has multiple entry points, no doorman, limited sight lines. If someone really wants to get to them, relocate them," Michael decided immediately. "Somewhere safe, where they can live normally while we figure out how to handle this long term." "Sir, respectfully, this is a huge step. You're talking about uprooting an entire family, changing their lives completely based on a threat we're not even sure is real yet." Michael turned to look at the city below, thinking of Emma's question from their meeting. "Will more bad people try to hurt you?" She had understood, even at 7, that his world contained dangers most people never had to contemplate. "The threat is real," he said finally. "Someone tried to kill me at my own event using intelligence that suggested deep corporate espionage. Now they know Emma was the one who exposed their plan. They're going to want to eliminate that variable, either by recruiting her abilities or ensuring she can never identify them again." His phone vibrated with an encrypted message from the FBI task force investigating the poisoning attempt. Michael read it twice before setting the device down with hands that trembled slightly. "Gentlemen, We have confirmation. The surveillance team watching the Johnson family has been traced to the same international network responsible for last week's attack. This isn't paranoia. This is an active threat against a 7-year-old girl whose only crime was saving my life. Dr. Chen stood abruptly. Michael, you have to move them immediately. If Emma's pattern recognition abilities are as advanced as our testing suggests, and if she's already detecting surveillance, then she's probably also sensing other threats that our professional security teams are missing. That child's mind is processing danger signals that our professional security teams can't pick up. As if summoned by their conversation, Michael's encrypted phone rang with a call from Robert Johnson, his voice tense with controlled panic. Mr. Carter, sorry to bother you, but Emma says we need to leave our apartment right now. She won't explain why, just keeps saying something feels wrong and different today. She's never acted like this before. I don't know whether to listen to a 7-year-old or listen to her, Michael interrupted, already signaling his security team. Pack only essential items and leave the building immediately. My security team will meet you at the diner on Northern Boulevard in 15 minutes. Don't take your car, don't use your usual route, and don't tell anyone where you're going. Mr. Carter, what's happening? Michael closed his eyes. Knowing his answer would change the Johnson family's life forever. Emma's gifts aren't just remarkable, Robert, they're dangerous. And right now, they're the only thing standing between your family and people who want to use them for purposes that would destroy everything you value. As emergency protocols activated around him and his security team rushed to extract the Johnson family from immediate danger, Michael realized that saving Emma's life was about to become as complex and challenging as the empire he had spent decades building. The girl who had saved him was about to discover that being extraordinary came with a price, and that sometimes the people who wanted to help her were as dangerous as those who wanted to harm her. The game had changed completely, and Emma Johnson, 7 years old and wearing a silver star pendant, had become the most valuable piece on a board where the stakes were measured in billions of dollars and human lives. The Carter Industries safe house in Westchester County looked like something from a luxury modern magazine. All glass walls, minimalist furniture, and technology so advanced it seemed to anticipate needs before they were expressed. Emma Johnson stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching deer graze on the manicured lawn, while her parents spoke in low, worried tones with Michael and his security team in the adjacent room. 3 weeks had passed since their emergency evacuation from Brooklyn, and Emma was still adjusting to a world where breakfast arrived on silver trays, where her temporary bedroom was larger than their entire previous apartment, and where silent men in dark suits monitored every entrance 24 hours a day. The silver star pendant at her throat had become her anchor to reality, a reminder that this surreal existence had begun with a single moment of courage that saved a man's life. The surveillance team watching your building has been neutralized, James Thompson reported to the gathered group, his tone professional but grim. However, our intelligence indicates they were only the reconnaissance phase of a much larger operation. The threat level against Emma and her family has actually increased. Linda Johnson squeezed her husband's hand, her knuckles white with tension. I don't understand. Emma saved Mr. Carter's life. Why would anyone want to hurt her for doing something good? Michael leaned forward, his expression carrying the weight of decisions that kept him awake at night. Because Emma's abilities represent something extraordinarily valuable in the wrong hands. The people who tried to kill me aren't just business rivals. They're part of an international network that specializes in corporate espionage and strategic asset acquisition. They've realized that someone who can detect threats and patterns, the way Emma does, could be worth billions to the right buyer. Robert's face hardened with protective anger. Asset acquisition? You're talking about my daughter like she's some kind of commodity. No, Michael said firmly. I'm talking about how other people see her. To me, Emma is a remarkable girl who deserves every opportunity to grow up safe and happy. But to them, She's a human surveillance system who could predict their enemies' movements, identify security vulnerabilities, and provide strategic advantages that no technology can match. Emma turned from the window, having heard every word despite the adult's assumption that she was lost, watching wildlife outside. At 7, she possessed an intuitive understanding of danger that had saved Michael's life. And now that same understanding was telling her something that made her stomach clench with fear. "They're not going to give up, are they?" she asked quietly, her voice carrying a maturity that reminded everyone present of how exceptional she really was. "The bad people want to take me away from Mommy and Daddy." The room fell silent. Michael felt his heart break a little at the matter-of-fact acceptance in Emma's voice, as if she had already resigned herself to being hunted for gifts she had never asked for. "That's not going to happen," Michael promised, meeting her eyes with absolute conviction. "I have resources, Emma. I have the best security team in the world, unlimited financial backing, and legal connections that can protect your family from anyone who tries to hurt you. But I need you to help me understand something." Emma walked over to the couch where Michael was sitting, climbing up beside him with the unself-conscious confidence that children reserve for people they instinctively know are safe. "What do you want to know?" "When you detected the poison in my dessert, when you noticed the surveillance team watching your building, when you knew you needed to leave your apartment immediately, what does it feel like? How do you know these things?" Emma was quiet for a long moment, her young mind working to articulate concepts that most adults would struggle to understand. "It's like you know when you walk into a room, and you can tell if people are happy or sad or angry, even if they don't say anything. It's like that, but for everything. The man putting things in your food felt angry and excited at the same time, which was wrong. The people watching our building felt patient and hungry, like cats watching mice. And that last day, everything felt tighter, like before a storm." Doctor Chen, who had been observing from the corner, approached with barely contained excitement. "Michael, what Emma is describing is environmental empathy combined with threat pattern recognition at a level that shouldn't be possible at her age. She's not just seeing details. She's intuiting emotional and intentional patterns in her environment that allow her to predict dangerous behavior, which makes her invaluable to anyone dealing with intelligence or security," Thompson added grimly. "Corporate espionage, military intelligence, law enforcement, criminal organizations. The applications are unlimited." Michael stood abruptly, walking to the window where he could see his security perimeter maintaining their vigilant watch. "Then we have to make her too valuable to steal and too protected to touch. We're not hiding anymore." "Sir?" Thompson looked confused by the sudden strategy shift. "Emma's abilities aren't a liability to be hidden. They're a gift to be developed and protected. I'm establishing the Johnson Foundation for Child Development with Emma as our first research partner. We'll study her abilities openly with full media coverage, complete transparency about the security measures protecting her, and partnerships with every major law enforcement agency in the world." Robert stood abruptly. "You want to put our daughter in the spotlight? Make her an even bigger target?" "I want to make her untouchable," Michael corrected. "Right now, she's valuable because she's secret. The moment she becomes a public figure with international protection and scientific documentation, she becomes too visible to kidnap and too important to harm. Any attack on her would trigger responses from governments, corporations, and law enforcement agencies worldwide." Linda joined her husband, her parental instincts competing with her recognition that her daughter's safety might require unprecedented measures. "What exactly are you proposing?" Michael turned back to face the family that had become the center of his universe in ways he was only beginning to understand. "I'm proposing we give Emma the educational and developmental opportunities her abilities deserve, while simultaneously making her the most protected child on Earth. Private tutoring, advanced educational programs, specialized training, all conducted in secure facilities with world-class security and complete media transparency." Emma tugged on Michael's sleeve again, a gesture that had become familiar over their weeks together. Mr. Carter, if I help you learn about my abilities, will that help other children who think differently too? The question hit Michael like a physical blow. Here was a 7-year-old girl facing threats that would terrorize most adults, thinking about how her sacrifice could benefit other children. The moral courage that had led her to save his life was now leading her to consider using her gifts for the greater good, regardless of the personal cost. "Yes, Emma," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Understanding how your mind works could help us identify and protect other children with similar abilities. You could be the key to helping hundreds or thousands of children who feel different or alone." Emma looked at her parents, then back at Michael, her 7-year-old mind grappling with decisions that would shape not just her future, but potentially the future of how society understands and protects exceptional children. "Will I still get to live with Mommy and Daddy? Will I still be Emma? Or will I have to be something different?" Michael knelt to her level, taking her small hands in his. "You will always be Emma Johnson, and you will always belong to your parents. Everything we do will be about helping you grow and become who you want to be, not forcing you to be what others need you to be." But even as Michael made this promise, his secure phone was vibrating with an encrypted message that would change everything again. The international network hunting Emma had just revealed their true scope and resources, and the game they were playing was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The girl who had saved a billionaire with her extraordinary gifts was about to discover that sometimes being special meant making choices no child should have to make. And Michael Carter, with all his wealth and power, was about to learn that there were some threats that money and security teams couldn't neutralize. Threats that could only be defeated by the same courage and insight that had saved his life in the first place. As Emma Johnson considered her future, surrounded by luxury and protection, but facing dangers beyond imagination, she touched the star pendant at her throat and wondered if being special was worth the price everyone seemed willing to pay for her abilities. The answer would determine not just her destiny, but the fate of everyone who had risked everything to keep her safe. The secure conference room in Carter Tower hummed with tension as Michael reviewed the intelligence report that had arrived during the night. FBI Director Patricia Collins sat across from him, her expression grim as she presented photographs and documents that painted a picture of conspiracy reaching far beyond anything they had previously imagined. "Michael, we've been approaching this all wrong," Director Collins began, sliding a photograph across the polished table. "The attempt on your life wasn't about corporate rivalry or foreign espionage. It was about Emma Johnson." Michael felt the blood drain from his face as he studied the surveillance photo taken weeks before his gala, showing Emma and her father leaving their Brooklyn apartment building. "They knew about her abilities before she saved my life. We've traced the network back 18 months. They've been monitoring exceptional children globally, children who demonstrate unusual pattern recognition, threat detection, or environmental awareness. Emma wasn't just on their radar. She was the primary target." James Thompson leaned forward, connecting dots that left everyone in the room uncomfortable. "You're saying they tried to poison Mr. Carter knowing Emma would detect it?" "Ooh, we believe they were testing her abilities while simultaneously creating a situation where they could legitimately approach the family as grateful beneficiaries of her heroism. If she hadn't spoken up, you'd be dead, and they'd have direct access to study her as a traumatized witness. When she did speak up, they planned to recruit your gratitude to fund their research." Michael slammed his hand on the table, making coffee cups rattle. "They were willing to assassinate me to get to a 7-year-old girl." "It gets worse," Director Collins continued, producing another set of documents. "The Johnson Foundation you're establishing, 3 of the child development specialists you consulted are on their payroll. The safe house in Westchester, they've had architectural plans for 6 weeks. Even some of your security team have been compromised." The implications crashed over Michael like a tsunami. Every decision he had made to protect Emma had been anticipated, potentially manipulated by people who understood her value better than he did. The foundation, the media strategy, even the secure location. It could all be part of an elaborate trap designed to give them legitimate access to study and ultimately control Emma's extraordinary abilities. "How deep does this go?" Michael asked, though part of him feared the answer. "International. We've identified cells in 12 countries, all focused on identifying and acquiring children with exceptional cognitive abilities. They call it Project Constellation, mapping and controlling the next generation of human intelligence before traditional governments even recognize it." Michael's secure phone vibrated with an emergency alert from the Westchester safe house. Emma's voice came through the encrypted speaker, high-pitched and scared in a way he had never heard before. "Mr. Carter, something's wrong. Very, very wrong. The people watching us aren't the same as yesterday, and they feel angry instead of protective. Daddy doesn't believe me, but I think some of the guardmen are different too. Their feelings are cold and focused, like the man who poisoned your food." Thompson was already activating emergency protocols, while Director Collins coordinated with federal response teams, but Michael knew they were operating at a disadvantage. If Emma's pattern recognition was detecting the threat, it meant the infiltration was already advanced. "Emma," Michael said into the phone, trying to keep his voice calm while his mind raced through contingency plans, "I need you to listen very carefully. Remember the game we talked about, where you would help me understand what you're feeling about people around you? How I asked you what colors people's feelings are? Exactly. Can you tell me about the colors you're seeing right now?" Emma's voice became more focused, less frightened, as she shifted into the analytical mode that made her abilities so extraordinary. "Mommy and Daddy are scared yellow and worried orange. The new guard men are excited red and patient black, which is wrong because guards should be protective green and alert blue. And there are people outside who feel hungry purple, like they're waiting for something they really want." Director Collins was speaking rapidly into her radio, coordinating with federal resources converging on the safe house. But Michael knew they were fighting a battle that had been lost before it began. Emma's kidnappers had planned this for months, while he had been playing catch-up for weeks. "Emma, I need you to do something very brave. Can you tell me if there's anyone in the house right now who feels protective green and alert blue like they should?" A pause, while Emma's extraordinary mind processed the emotional landscape around her like radar, reading intentions and analyzing threat patterns with a precision that surpassed any technological surveillance system. "Mrs. Martinez, the lady who brings our food, she feels green and blue, but also scared red for me. And there's someone else, someone hiding who feels determined silver and pure white, like they want to help, but are also afraid." Michael felt a surge of hope. Maria Martinez had been vetted by his personal security team, and if Emma's abilities were identifying her as trustworthy, it meant they still had allies within the compromised safe house. "Emma, I need you to find Mrs. Martinez very quietly. Don't let anyone see you, especially not the guardmen who feel wrong. Can you do that?" "Yes, but Mr. Carter, I'm scared. The hungry purple people outside are getting closer, and the excited red guardmen are starting to move more. It feels like before the storm, but bigger." Michael closed his eyes, knowing he was about to ask a 7-year-old girl to navigate a situation that would challenge experienced intelligence operatives. But Emma's abilities were their only advantage in a game where every other piece had been compromised. "Emma, you saved my life once by being brave enough to speak up when adults weren't listening. Now I need you to save your own life by being brave enough to trust your feelings and help the good people find you. Can you do that?" "I think so. But Mr. Carter, after this is over, can we go somewhere where my feelings don't have to save people anymore? Somewhere I can just be a normal girl." The heartbreaking innocence of her request almost broke Michael's composure. Here was a child with abilities governments would kill for, asking only for the chance to experience a normal childhood, something her extraordinary gifts might never allow. "I promise, Emma, after we get through this, I'll find a way to give you the most normal, happy childhood any girl ever had. You have my word." But even as Michael made this promise, Director Collins was showing satellite imagery that revealed the true scope of what they were facing. The safe house wasn't just compromised. It was surrounded by a coordinated extraction team with resources that suggested military-level support. Emma Johnson, the 7-year-old girl who had saved a billionaire's life with her extraordinary abilities, was about to face the ultimate test of those same gifts. The people who had spent months planning to acquire her weren't just criminals. They were professionals who understood her value better than anyone else in the world. The game had always been rigged, and Emma was the prize everyone was willing to kill for. Her only advantages were the same qualities that had saved Michael's life: her ability to read danger in ways others couldn't, and her courage to act on what she knew was right, even when the adults around her failed to understand. But this time, the stakes weren't just one man's life. This time, the stakes were the freedom and future of the most gifted child anyone had ever encountered, and the survival of everyone who dared to protect her. Emma Johnson crept through the corridors of the safe house with the silent precision of a child who had learned to read danger in every shadow, every sound, every subtle shift in the emotional atmosphere around her. The silver star pendant at her throat caught the dim emergency lighting as she made her way toward the kitchen where Mrs. Martinez would be preparing the evening meal, her 7-year-old mind processing threat patterns that would have overwhelmed most adults. The guardmen who felt wrong were positioned at strategic points throughout the house, their excited red and patient black emotional signatures creating a map of danger that only Emma could read. She pressed herself against walls, moved when their attention shifted, and navigated through blind spots that her extraordinary environmental awareness revealed with mathematical precision. Mrs. Martinez was arranging dinner plates when Emma slipped into the kitchen like a ghost, her approach so quiet that the older woman startled when small hands gently tugged her apron. "Emma, Nina, you scared me. What are you doing wandering around? Your parents are looking for you." "Mrs. Martinez," Emma whispered urgently, "the bad people are here. Some of the guards are really bad people pretending to be good guards. Mr. Carter told me to find you because you feel protective green instead of excited red, like the bad ones." Mrs. Martinez knelt to Emma's level, her expression shifting from confusion to alarm as she processed what the child was saying. In the 3 weeks of caring for the Johnson family, she had witnessed Emma's extraordinary abilities firsthand and had learned to trust the girl's instincts implicitly. "How many bad guards, Mija?" Emma closed her eyes, extending her environmental awareness throughout the house like radar, reading the emotional signatures of every person within her range. 6 of them, 2 at the front door, 1 in the hallway upstairs near Mommy and Daddy, 1 in the security office, and 2 outside near the cars. The good guards are gone. They feel empty, like no one's there anymore. The implication hit Mrs. Martinez like a physical blow. The legitimate security team had been neutralized, replaced by operatives whose job was to deliver Emma to people who saw her as nothing more than a valuable resource to be studied and controlled. "And outside? How many people outside?" Emma's face scrunched in concentration as she pushed her abilities to their limits, reading the larger perimeter around the safe house. "Many, maybe 15 or 20. They're in a big circle around the house, and they all feel hungry purple and determined silver. They're waiting for something." Mrs. Martinez pulled out a phone Emma had never seen before, speaking rapidly in Spanish to someone on the other end. Within moments, she was moving with purpose, collecting specific items from hidden locations throughout the kitchen. "Emma, I need you to listen very carefully. I'm not just the cook here. I work for Mr. Carter's special security team, the people he trusts when he can't trust anyone else. We knew this might happen, and we have a plan, but I need you to be the bravest girl in the world for just a little longer." Emma nodded solemnly, understanding that her extraordinary gifts had brought them to this moment, where her courage would determine whether her family lived or died. There's a hidden passage behind the pantry that leads to a tunnel Mr. Carter had built when the house was constructed. It comes out in the woods half a mile away, where good people are waiting to take you somewhere truly safe. But first, we need to get your parents. They moved through the house like shadows, Emma's ability to read emotional signatures, allowing them to avoid the fake guards, while Mrs. Martinez disabled security systems that had been compromised by the infiltration. When they reached the second floor, Emma's parents were huddled in their bedroom, Robert holding an improvised weapon, while Linda clutched a phone with no signal. "Robert, Linda, we're leaving now," Mrs. Martinez whispered as she opened the hidden panel behind what appeared to be a solid wall. Emma's abilities detected the infiltration. The entire security team has been compromised. "My daughter was right again," Robert said with a mixture of pride and terror as he helped Linda into the narrow passage. "How does she do it? She reads people's intentions like other children read picture books," Mrs. Martinez replied, guiding the family through the darkness illuminated only by small LED strips. "And right now, she's the reason we're still alive." The tunnel stretched ahead of them, a concrete lifeline built by Michael Carter's paranoid but prophetic planning. As they moved through the underground passage, Emma could feel the emotional turbulence above them as their escape was discovered. The excited red signatures shifting to frustrated orange, then to angry black, as the realization set in that their primary target had vanished. "They know we're gone," Emma whispered. "They feel very, very angry now, like when you break something important that can't be fixed." Mrs. Martinez increased their pace, knowing their initial advantage was measured in minutes before sophisticated tracking equipment identified their escape route. "How much farther to feel safe, Mija?" Emma extended her awareness as far as she could reach, touching the emotional signatures of people positioned throughout the forest around them. What she found made her smile for the first time in hours. "There are good people waiting for us, lots of them. They feel protective green and determined silver, but in a good way. And Mr. Carter is there too. He feels relieved gold and worried blue, which means he was scared for us but will be happy when he sees we're okay." They emerged from the tunnel in a forest clearing, where Michael Carter waited, with what appeared to be half the FBI's tactical response team, along with military personnel whose presence indicated federal involvement at the highest levels. Emma ran directly to Michael, who caught her in his arms with relief so profound it was visible to everyone present. "You did it, Emma. Your abilities saved not just your family, but potentially dozens of other children these people had targeted. The intelligence we gathered from your operation tonight will shut down their entire network." FBI Director Collins approached the reunited family, her expression carrying both admiration and concern. "Emma, what you accomplished tonight, reading their intentions, navigating through the house unseen, guiding your family to safety, is beyond anything we thought possible from someone your age." Emma looked up at Director Collins with eyes that seemed much older than her 7 years. "I just want the bad people to stop trying to take me away from my family. I want to use my abilities to help good people, not be a thing that bad people fight over." Michael knelt to Emma's level, recognizing that this moment would define not just her future, but how society learned to understand and protect children with extraordinary abilities. "Emma, I'm establishing something new, not just a foundation to study exceptional children, but a school where children like you can learn to develop their gifts safely with their families, surrounded by people who understand that being different doesn't mean being alone. You'll be our first student, but more importantly, you'll help us learn how to protect and nurture other children who see the world like you do." Emma touched her star pendant, thinking about everything that had led to this moment, from a poisoned dessert to a midnight escape through underground tunnels. Will there be other children who can feel what people are thinking? Children who see patterns that adults miss? "Yes," Michael promised. "Children who are special in ways the world is just beginning to understand. And you'll help us make sure they never have to face alone what you've faced." 6 months later, Emma Johnson stood in the sunny classroom of the Carter Institute for Exceptional Children, wearing a school uniform and the same silver star pendant that had become her symbol of courage. Around her, 12 other children with extraordinary abilities learned to develop their gifts in an environment of safety, understanding, and protection that Emma's bravery had made possible. The Johnson family lived in a beautiful house on the Institute's campus, where Robert worked as facilities coordinator and Linda directed the Family Support Services program. Michael visited weekly, not as a benefactor, but as someone who understood that true wealth came from nurturing the extraordinary potential that existed in children who saw the world differently. Emma had kept her promise to herself. She had found a way to use her abilities to help good people while still being allowed to be a girl who played with friends, learned normal subjects, and experienced the childhood every exceptional child deserved. And sometimes, when she looked at her reflection wearing the star pendant that had started it all, Emma Johnson smiled, knowing that the scared 7-year-old who had saved a billionaire's life had grown into someone who was saving something even more precious, the future of every special child who would never again have to face their extraordinary gifts alone. The girl who had seen danger when adults looked away had become the guardian angel for children whose only crime was being born with abilities that made them valuable to the wrong people and precious to the right ones. And Michael Carter, the billionaire who had learned that true success was measured not in dollars, but in transformed lives, had discovered that sometimes the greatest fortune came from a child's courage to speak up when silence would have been safer. In a world that often feared what it didn't understand, Emma Johnson had proven that being different wasn't a burden to be hidden, but a gift to be celebrated, protected, and shared with others brave enough to see the extraordinary potential that existed in every child who dared to be special. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Your participation helps us continue creating inspiring content. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss any of our exciting stories about courage, hope, and the power of making a difference, no matter your age. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that every act of courage, no matter how small, can change the world. And tell us in the comments, have you ever witnessed a moment where one person's courage made all the difference? Thank you for watching, and remember, we all have the power to be the hero in someone's story.